Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Six. I'm continuing my study of the life of Samson and discovering how God uses me and works in my life, even in the broken places. Hope you'll join me. Get Judges chapter 14 open, Judges 14 and 15. Let's take a look at it together. Come on with me. So if you were with us yesterday in the Daily Six, we read Judges chapter 14, where we saw all this family drama that Samson got himself bought into through his lustful relationship, his lustful desire for a Philistine woman that he didn't even really know. He ends up taking her to be his wife. And in this wedding ceremony, it lasted multiple days. Samson gets all sideways with her family. There's all manner of family drama. They're threatening to kill her. She's crying to him, "You don't love me," and ends up this complete mess where Samson's not even there. And her father gives her to the best man at the wedding. And we're going to pick up in chapter 15 and see what happens and how God was leveraging this. It's going to feel dark, but it is in fact how God was purposing to launch a war between the Israelites and the Philistines so he could deliver the Israelites from their bondage under this awful, wicked people. So in chapter 15, verse 1, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and he went to visit his wife. And he said, "Well, I'm going to go to my wife's room. I'm going to go visit her." But her father would not let him go in. And here's what Dad says: "I was so sure that you thoroughly hated her because of all this family drama we read about in chapter 14, that I gave her to your friend. I gave your bride to your best man at the wedding while you weren't there." And then he, as a consolation, latter part of verse 2, he says, "Well, hey, isn't her younger sister more attractive? Why don't you take her instead?" And so Samson reacts. Verse 3, Samson said to them, to the whole family, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines, and I will really harm them." So he went out. He caught 300 fox. He tied them tail to tail in pairs. He fastened a torch to every one of their tails. He lit the torches. He lit the foxes loose in the standing grain of the Philistines. And he burned up the shocks and the standing grain together with all the vineyards and olive groves. Basically, he goes and he burns down the entire food source and all this of the Philistines. And when they asked, verse 6, when they asked who did this, they were told, well, it was Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to his friend. And then look at the darkness of this people. So the Philistines went up and they burned her and her father to death. So Samson said, "Since you've acted like this, I won't stop until I get my revenge on you." And he attacked them viciously, slaughtered many of them, and on and on and on this goes. What a wretched, awful story. We go on in chapter 16, verse 4. He falls in love with another woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. And so all of chapter 16 is a story of the Philistines trying to get Delilah to reveal Samson's strength to them. What is the source of God's strength in his life? And she whines and cajoles him and begs him and pleads with him and cries, and he ends up giving up the secret of his great strength, his Nazirite vow. And then ultimately, the latter part of chapter 16, Samson dies, but yet he dies still, bringing about more warfare, more death upon the Philistines. And you say, boy, this just sounds like an awful story. And frankly, it is. But God is looking, and we read it there in chapter 14, God was looking for an occasion to break loose this stranglehold between the Philistines and the Israelites and to bring about victory. God would use Samson, an obviously sinful person, obviously through wretched techniques and just awful stuff. And you read this and you think, boy, this doesn't sound like the kind of God I want to follow. Well, friends, here's some notes I've been making. The Lord's been showing this to me. You read these stories and boy, they don't feel good. And I don't think they are. But sometimes there are examples given to us in the Bible that are not necessarily good examples. There are heroes of the Bible, Men and women who would be used in great exploits to bring about God's agenda in the world. But it doesn't always come about in a way that God would want. See, friends, just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean this is how it's supposed to be. But it's in the Bible because it's exactly how God had used him. God is able to use us even in our brokenness. Here's what the Lord showed me. I wrote it down. That sometimes these stories expose the frailty and the destructive tendencies of our human nature. We live so far below what God wants for us. Sometimes often we don't live up to God's best plan in our life. We fail, we mess it up. We sin our way into greater hardships and greater conflicts than God desires for us. And yet his love is not diminished for us. His power in our life is not scuttled. His purpose, his usefulness in our lives is not abandoned. It's just through our brokenness, God is forced to leverage the carnage we've created for ourselves for him to be able to get to a better purpose. Friends, I hope this gives you some encouragement. And as you give God 6 more minutes today, could you reflect on how God is, in fact, still using you, using me, in spite of our broken places? And then coming back tomorrow on the Daily 6, we're going to turn the corner into a far more positive story, a story of a very, very faithful woman. We'll look out tomorrow and all of next week right here on the Daily 6. Give them 6 more minutes and come on back tomorrow. We'll see you right here.